It's going to be an interesting offseason in the NFL, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. The landscape of the league could potentially look very different next season. Quarterbacks who have spent their entire career with the team that drafted them could be wearing, and a lot of them will be wearing, different jerseys in 2021. We talked about Carson Wentz yesterday. We have discussed Deshaun Watson several times over the past couple of weeks. Looks like Drew Brees is going to retire. Maybe. Who the hell knows? His wife came out last week and posted to Instagram something about Drew Brees playing the majority of the season with a torn rotator cuff. Talked about him playing through his rib injury in the playoffs. And it makes me kind of wonder if Drew Brees might be angling for a return next season. Now, as a Saints fan, I really don't know how I feel about this. The torn rotator cuff makes sense. I mean, he couldn't throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field through the playoffs. I'm sure with Drew Brees, the what ifs are starting to creep in. If I was healthy, we could have won the Super Bowl this year. I heard someone say the other day that the Sean Payton Drew Brees era in New Orleans is ending in disappointment because the Saints only made it to and won one Super Bowl. I couldn't disagree more. This era, the past 15 years in New Orleans, has been a resounding success. Drew Brees and Sean Payton transformed the Saints. Decades of consistent losing. Now, the Saints are well respected throughout the NFL. With that being said, I feel like it is time for Drew Brees to hang it up. Time to retire. He has been injured the last 2 or 3 years. His body just can't handle it anymore. Anyway, my bad. I'm getting off topic here. Let's get to the purpose of this video. Another franchise quarterback that will be playing with a different team next season is Matthew Stafford. And by God, it is time. It is well past time Matt Stafford got the hell out of Detroit. There's an interesting article in the Detroit Free Press talking about the Matt Stafford situation in Detroit. And they are blasting him for having the audacity to demand a trade. How can Matt Stafford do this to the Lions? In one way, I guess I can kind of understand it. I mean, it's the hometown newspaper, and the franchise quarterback is wanting out of town. So it's kind of understandable. But their logic behind blasting Matt Stafford demanding a trade, I just don't agree with it. The Detroit Free Press makes the case that Stafford should have went to the Lions privately, asked for his trade, and then allowed the Lions to shop him. They said he shouldn't have made the trade demand public because it takes away all of the leverage from the franchise. Now that teams know that Matt Stafford wants out, and the Lions, they can't have a disgruntled quarterback leading their team next season, Detroit won't be able to demand as much in return for Matt Stafford. And they also have a deadline in dealing him. If they don't trade him by March 17th, the Lions are on the hook for his $10 million roster bonus in 2021, which would essentially be wasted money hitting your cap for a quarterback that is not going to be there and doesn't want to be there. So in a way, the Detroit Free Press has a point. Matt Stafford did take away some of the Lions' leverage in trade negotiations, but I feel like they over-exaggerated a little bit, probably because they're coming from a place of emotion. I saw a report today that 1/3 of the teams in the NFL have expressed interest in Matt Stafford. He is not going to have a problem finding a home next season, unlike Cam Newton, who could be on his way out of the NFL altogether. This is great news for the Detroit Lions. They could pit teams together, create a bidding war. If a team really wants Matt Stafford, they're not going to risk waiting until March 16th or March 17th to get a trade done. Because if they do that, they risk losing him to another franchise. The Lions are going to have multiple suitors. You take the best possible deal that you can get. I mean, at this point, Detroit owes Matt Stafford nothing. He wants out. If a team like the Jets gives you the best deal, ship him off to lose for the next few years in New York with another team that's in the middle of a rebuild, another rebuild. Now, on the same token, Matt Stafford doesn't owe the Lions anything either, which leads me to my next point. One of the points of contention in the Detroit Free Press article that was bashing Matt Stafford was the fact that he has turned his back on the veterans in the locker room. What? What? I mean, the article states, I wonder how left tackle Taylor Decker feels about Matt Stafford leaving. I don't wonder that. I mean, who the hell cares how Taylor Decker feels about it? The last time I checked, the NFL is a business. Matt Stafford gave the Lions the first 12 years of his career. He gave them ample opportunity to build a team around him. He doesn't owe them or the veterans on the roster anything. 12 years, 3 playoff appearances. At this point, the career of Matt Stafford has been a failure. The article blames him for the failure in Detroit, saying he's had 24 Pro Bowl players throughout his tenure in Detroit, which is true. And I'm not saying that Matt Stafford's blameless. Some of the blame for his failed tenure in Detroit does fall on his shoulders. I mean, as the franchise quarterback, it's his responsibility to elevate the players around him. But it's the front office's responsibility to build a complete team around him. And the Lions haven't done that. This team has seemingly been in a constant rebuild since I've been alive. Matt Stafford carried the Lions to the playoffs back in 2011, the best season of his career. They had one of the worst defenses that season, ranked near the bottom of the league in rushing. But look at what happened the other 2 times they built a decent team around them. 2014, number 3 defense in the league. They go 11-5, make the playoffs. 2016, defense ranked 13th. And even with the worst rushing attack in the NFL, Matt Stafford still got the Lions in the playoffs, 9-7 record. My point is, he has done everything that he can to lift this franchise. They've just failed to build a consistent team around him. He owes them nothing. He has earned the right to play the last few years of his career with a Super Bowl contender, not a team going through yet another rebuild in Detroit. So where does Matt Stafford end up playing next season? We know it's not going to be in Detroit, and we know a third of the league is interested. We just don't know which teams, but it's not hard to figure out the most likely candidates. I'm going to briefly go through a couple of them here and tell you which teams I feel have the best chance. Let's start with my New Orleans Saints. I've been saying for a month or so now that I hope the Saints go hard after Matt Stafford this offseason. The Taysom Hill experiment was an abject failure. It's time to move on from Drew Brees. And Jameis Winston is going to be a free agent. For the first time since 2006, New Orleans doesn't have a quarterback entering the offseason. There's one big problem, though. The Saints don't have any money. Literally, they have no money. They're projected to be anywhere from $100 to $105 million over the salary cap. I mean, they can't afford me to be their quarterback, much less Matt Stafford. Now, Mickey Loomis has proven over the years that he is one of the best at manipulating the cap to his advantage. But I don't know how he gets out of this mess that they've created in New Orleans. Not only that, they don't have much to offer Detroit in return for Matt Stafford. I think the Saints are going to look to retain Jameis Winston for the cheap, and he is going to be their starter next season. But what about the Denver Broncos? The Broncos could be an interesting team if they landed Matt Stafford. They've got the cap space. They could send Detroit the number 9 pick in the draft. And the Broncos need a quarterback. Drew Lock was disappointing again this season, and he's injury prone. Even though Denver finished 5-11, they have a window to compete immediately. The Broncos defense is legit. They ranked 13th in DVOA, and that was with them missing Von Miller. Plus, they have a group of young receivers that can stretch the field, which would complement Matt Stafford and his big arm. You put Matt Stafford on this team in Denver, they're immediately playoff contenders. But I think there are 2 other teams with more to offer Detroit and make more sense for Matt Stafford, one being the Chicago Bears. They could send the Lions 2 first-rounders in exchange for Matt Stafford. And it would give Chicago something that they've needed the entire Matt Nagy era. Hell, it would give Chicago something they've needed my entire lifetime. A franchise quarterback. I said it all season. The Bears are elite defensively, but defenses age quickly in the NFL. Chicago has been wasting their defense with poor quarterback play. And even though Mitchell Trubisky looked great, he caught fire toward the end of the season, even led the Bears to the playoffs. If you can get Matt Stafford, you get Matt Stafford and kiss Mitchell Trubisky goodbye. Plus, if you can get Stafford, It might convince Allen Robinson to stay in Chicago, the Bears' only threat at receiver. The only problem I see with Stafford to Chicago, the Lions likely aren't going to be too keen on trading him within the division. But if the Bears maybe spice up the deal, offer them Khalil Mack, maybe that would change their mind. I just don't know if Matt Stafford is worth sending Khalil Mack to Detroit. Last but not least, and the team with the most realistic chance of getting Matt Stafford, the San Francisco 49ers. I think the Niners are going to go after both Deshaun Watson and Matt Stafford, and they're going to land one of the two. Like Chicago, the Niners could send the Lions 2 first-round picks in exchange for Matt Stafford. And if they landed them, you have to consider San Francisco Super Bowl contenders. There are not a lot of holes on this roster. Hell, half the team is going to come into 2021 well rested because they spent most of 2020 on IR. Stafford would fit in seamlessly with Kyle Shanahan's offensive system. We saw what Shanahan could do with Jimmy G. He got them to a Super Bowl. Now imagine the offense with Matt Stafford. Jimmy G struggled with reads, struggled reading defenses, struggled with mechanics in the pocket. All things that Matt Stafford excels at because he has the experience. With his arm strength, along with George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, the Niners will once again have one of the top offenses in the NFL to go along with an elite defense. They do have one minor issue. They still have Jimmy G under contract, but that's a simple fix. If they cut Jimmy G, they're only hit with like a $2.5 million cap hit. That is chump change when you consider they'd have to pay him over $26 million if they retained him. Now, I know a lot of people have mentioned the Indianapolis Colts in the running for Matt Stafford. Some people have them at the top of the list. And I'm sure Indy will make a play for him. But I think the Colts are going to go after Carson Wentz. We talked about this yesterday. That's why I didn't put the Colts on my list of candidates for Matt Stafford. All right, that's all for today. Hit that like and subscribe button. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Leave me a comment in the section below. What do you guys think of the Detroit Free Press blasting Matt Stafford on his way out of town? Was he wrong to publicly demand a trade? Where do you think Matt Stafford plays next season? Let me know your thoughts. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Best way to contact me is by email at BTLKC84@gmail.com. I'll see you guys next time.